gentlemen, we are less than 24 hours away from MSI 2018 finally getting underway. Eric and Mark here on League on Lock, breaking down the upcoming tournament. And it's time to start with that top 10 countdown, the top 10 players at this event. And there are a lot of good players.
Oh yeah, this was definitely a hard list to whittle it down and get to these 10 players because this is the midseason invitational, folks. We have got some incredible talent coming in, and it's going to be spicy.
Yeah, and we're only taking from the 4 teams that are already qualified into the main stage. Don't really think anyone outside of those 4 teams would probably crack the top 10 anyways, but we're just going from those 4 teams. So let's begin this countdown, starting with number 10, the only double digit on this list, and the only player from NA. Yes, it is Doublelift after his absolutely insane playoff run. Can he keep up that high quality play at MSI? Maybe not against stiffer competition, but he's coming in at number 10.
Yep, he is our number 10 player, and he's absolutely going to be key for Team Liquid if they want to make it farther into the midseason invitational than most North American teams have in the past. Doublelift is key for them because he's absolutely the win condition for them in the bot lane. He needs to be popping off. He needs to be dealing damage in order for things to work for Team Liquid. If he's behind, they're in trouble.
Yeah, and I think one of the big picks you're going to see at this tournament is that Kai'Sa, which they changed how it interacts with Death Dance and Rage Blade in 8.9, but that's not the patch they're playing on at MSI, so that's going to be perma-banned throughout the tournament or first picks by pretty much every single team at the event. So we'll see if he can play that champion. I'm sure he's been practicing it a bunch in solo queue. Obviously, you saw his Ashe counter pick to the Caitlyn coming out in the playoffs, and that playoff run in general was just absolutely bonkers. I don't see him playing at that level against the higher competition. I mean, the 80 carry talent pool is absolutely stacked at this event, but Doublelift, the only NA guy coming in at number 10, and I think deservedly so.
Yeah, a world-class player truly is, but the one thing you have to remember about Doublelift is all the accolades he's done and everything he's accomplished in North America, he still has struggled on the world stage and at international events, so really looking forward to seeing if he can step out of those demons and put in a good performance.
Yeah, we'll see if he can shut up the naysayers in that regard. Let's go to number 9, where we've got, people might think he's a little low on this list, but it is Xiaohu, the forgotten about carry on this RNG squad, because Uzi gets pretty much all the attention. Everyone's talking about him, looking at him. He gets his first title, blah, 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 blah. Uzi, Uzi, Uzi. Xiaohu is still a fantastic mid laner. Yeah, his numbers and play are down a little bit from his MVP season, which is understandable, but I mean, he's still the secondary carry on this squad and a guy to look to in that mid lane.
Yeah, and you're talking about it exactly there. That 2017 LPL MVP season that he did have really showed the exact type of pop-off that this guy can have and the absolute impact that he can bring to a roster and take down other teams. The only issue is we didn't exactly see that type of player this split. He took more of a backseat behind the likes of Uzi, the likes of Mlxg, guys who were truly dominating and taking over the game for RNG. Xiaohu wasn't necessarily that this split, but it doesn't mean that he's not capable of it. Really one of the premier mid laners in the world.
Yeah, and you can see that he's got the gold share there is really the standout stat for me. Is typically your mid laner is going to be getting a huge chunk of your team's change, but he's definitely less focused on the team, as obviously is going to happen when you have Uzi on the squad. But that low gold share percentage is just a testament to how well he can perform with a lot less resources than most mid laners.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what his champion pool is going to be heading into this tournament. That was an issue at Worlds last year where we were finding into that semifinals where Galio was up almost every single time and he said, no, I don't really want to play Galio, I'll let Faker play it. Didn't work out so well for RNG. This time, going to be interesting. Galio's not necessarily that hot pick that you're going to be going for again, but it's going to be interesting to see if there's any other priority picks in the mid lane that he might be passing up on.
Yeah, the new tank mid laner is Sion, and I'm sure he's going to have a heavy presence at MSI 2018. Let's go on to number 8. We got another RNG pal. It's that mid-jungle duo for Xiaohu, Mlxg, not Mlxd. In the playoffs, he was fully Mlxg, and he was absolutely fantastic for RNG during their run.
Yeah, and when you're looking at RNG and how they were able to accomplish their victory in the LPL, it absolutely has to give credit to Mlxg. This guy went through and absolutely popped off, dominated, terrorized the other team. Whatever you want to say, he was doing it, and it was fantastic to see for him. Someone to rebound after last year where people were thinking that he was weaker than he was, and bringing in Karsa as to be the starter at the beginning. But through his performance, he regained that spot and looks like he's going to be the starter heading into MSI.
Yeah, and people are going to say he's too inconsistent, and in the regular season, he wasn't that great. Karsa was definitely the better jungler during the regular season, but in the playoffs, it was far and away Mlxg. They kind of gave him the start, and we're like, we'll see what you can do. If you struggle, we throw Karsa in, but he performed fantastically and never really gave up the reins. Karsa played one game. He played game 1 against EDG. Didn't look that great. They lose that game. Mlxg comes in from there, and they are bringing Karsa as the sub. You're only allowed 6 guys at MSI. They're bringing in Karsa, so maybe he gets some looks in the group stage, but Mlxg is definitely going to be getting the majority of the starts in this.
And if you're RNG and you're thinking about taking down and toppling King Zone, you have to be thinking that Mlxg is absolutely going to be key, because if you want to take down the King Zone Dragons, what you have to do is get ahead of Peanut. If you can stop Peanut from being able to extend leads and advantages in the already strong solo lanes for King Zone, you give your lanes a chance to stable and hold it in and get to that later mid game that you need to, and eventually start trying to win some of these team fights to get ahead on top.
Yeah, and a lot is going to depend on how well Mlxg does, how far RNG does. But he's gone far at MSI before, finished at the top of the group stage in 2016. We'll see if he can repeat that performance. Let's go to number 7, where we've got our first Fnatic member. We're talking about the clapping Caps himself in that mid lane, who asserted himself as the best mid laner in EU after he dumpstered Perks really in the time.
Again, as much as I tried pleading with Eric, he wouldn't let me put Buipo in at this spot. It's Caps as our first.
We got 6 more spots for Buipo.
It's Caps here as our first Fnatic member, and I really want to say that this is a deserved spot for him. People are going to say, you're just throwing in an EU mid laner here to please some people. No way. Caps really did step up his performance this split and was, aside from Rekkles, who's obviously always going to be the #1 win condition and carry option for Fnatic, Caps was there, and I want to really say one thing that Caps really needs credit for is the absolute pressure that he was able to manage in this split. He was taking on so many visits from the opposing jungler and everything else, and he was a stable rock for Fnatic in that mid lane, not providing advantages to the other team, something that was an issue with him at Worlds in 2017, so really improved performance from him this split, and I think he is ready to take that next step on the world stage.
And really, he just had way less over-aggression in the laning phase, overextending. He learned from getting camped, and you saw in the playoffs that he is a legitimate win condition for Fnatic and a play style that they can play through, specifically against that Vitality series. It was all Caps in that set. Rekkles himself said, pretty much carried me. I played Ezreal a bunch. Yeah, they were throwing like 580 carry bans at Rekkles, but he just sat on the Ezreal, and it was Caps who was taking over these games. Over 82% kill participation in the playoffs. So pretty much every game plan was running through Caps, and everyone knows he's been a mechanical god ever since he came on, but now he's really getting a higher game sense. So that's why he's in at number 7 ahead of Xiaohu, which some people might not like.
Yeah, but I think the one thing that you do need to give credit for Caps for is that he has this champion pool that is usually pretty large considering most of the mid laners. And one thing that really excites me about Caps that I've seen him play is the Aurelion Sol, because that's a definite champion that won't be banned out. There's going to be so many bans that you must ban, like the Kai'Sa. And when you have an Aurelion Sol on your team, you really can be dealing out that damage in the mid lane.
Yeah, and I'm sure Swain will also be a contested pick in that mid lane. Coming up after the break, just how high can the Westerners go? We're moving on to the top 6. We are back on League Unlock. Eric and Mark here counting down the top 10 players at this year's mid-season invitational because it's less than a day away. It feels like we've been waiting for about a month, this little mini off-season, but...
It always feels like forever until we get to one of these international events, but when they hit, oh boy, are they exciting.
Oh boy, are they exciting. And it's also as exciting as number 6 on our list. You've probably heard of him before, the EU LCS back-to-back MVP, Rekkles, 80 carry for Fnatic, who had a ludicrous regular season, a equally ludicrous postseason with what should have been 2 pentakills in the grand finals, and he's the best 80 carry in the West.
Absolutely, and if you're going to say the best 80 carry in the West, it also has to be the best Tristana in the West. That is truly the signature champion for me with Rekkles right now. It's unfortunate because there have been some changes that we could have had AD Kennen, but not quite in time for MSI and ready for it. So it might be just the Tristana show from Rekkles, but hey, that's a pretty darn good show, almost picking up 2 pentakills in the finals at the EU LCS.
Yeah, obviously his Tristana KDA is insane, and 80-something. His Sivir also quite nasty, and you know, some people are saying, well, yeah, but he's playing in EU where the bot lanes aren't very good. The competition isn't as high a level as other regions, which is true. Sure, overall the bot lanes are going to be better in the likes of Korea and China, but I mean, he's still completely dumpstered the rest of the league. I know there was a big exodus with guys like Sven and Mithy leaving, but that shouldn't just take away from all that Rekkles has done this season.
And what can you say about the guy that when the rest of his teammates say, you know what, if we're going to MSI, we might not have that break before Worlds, and we're going to be, you know, running into some tired players here. And the thing is that Rekkles said, no, I still want to be training. I still want to be working hard. I'm going to go to Korea and boot camp on my own, making it all the way to Challenger. He is so ready for this tournament.
Yeah, the drive and work ethic that this guy has is unmatched in a lot of the scenes. It's a Korean level, as you could say. That's why they're so fantastic. But I expect him to put up a good showing. His first ever MSI. He wasn't with Fnatic back in 2015. They had Steel back in the lineup then, but Fnatic, I think, deserving of that top 6 spot, and is, spoilers, the highest ranked Western player on our list.
And it's going to be exciting to see him go up against the other bot lanes at this tournament, a true premium type of event that we're going to be having with who's going to be in that bot lane for the certain teams.
It's going to be an interesting matchup in the bottom lane. Speaking of bottom lanes, we're on to number 5, where it's a familiar guy in a top tier ranking list. It's Prey of Kingzone. There's a lot of Kingzone guys in the top 5, by the way. Prey and Gorilla, if Rekkles is the best AD carry in the West, Prey and Gorilla are the best bot lane on the planet, and have been for a while now.
Oh, without a doubt, you have to say that Prey and Gorilla have been the most dominant AD carry support pairing in almost the history of League of Legends, if not right now, because they have dominated their performance. And another fantastic split from them in the LCK, where they were just going off 2v2. There was no more dangerous duo than this one.
Yeah, and just when everyone else on Kingzone seemed to be getting all the hype, this playoff run against Africa, Prey was insane in that series on the Kai'Sa, as pretty much everyone across all regions seemed to be just a totally busted champion. But I mean, this guy has never had champion pool issues. He can play whatever's in the meta, and I'm fully expecting him and Gorilla to put on a show at MSI 2018, as he does at most international competitions.
You're going to have to be bringing your A game if you're going to be wanting to get by Kingzone in the first place, but it's going to be even tougher because a lot of these teams that are already in, their strength is in that bot lane, which is so already neutralized by having Prey and Gorilla there.
Yeah, and you might think 5, well, that seems a little low for Prey, actually. Well, it's because his teammates are stealing all the spots from him, because coming in at number 4, you got Peanut in the jungle, who was an absolute animal this LCK split. Clearly clear-cut as the best jungler in Korea, and it was no different in the playoffs, regular season, whenever. He was clearly the starter over Cuz, and he really thrived in that role.
This was the redemption season for Peanut. Heading over to SKT last year, a lot of people, including myself, had such high expectations for him. Him working with Coma, everything was going to be unlocked. It was going to be great, and it didn't quite work out. But
it did in spring.
But in spring, I want to say, it did work out, and we did see the incredible performances that he is capable of. That aggression, that absolute bloodlust that he does have is top-notch, and I think that he is going to be heading into MSI in arguably the top condition that he's ever been in his career, and he's going to be looking to make some teams have some nightmares in the jungle.
Yeah, and if you jump back to last year's MSI, yeah, there was that game against the Marines where he got 160 kills on Lee Sin. But that whole tournament, he was just an absolute terror on the Rift, and I expect to see a pretty similar performance from him this year. By the way, he's one of the few guys who actually played at last year's MSI.
And he is such a strong player and so vital to the success of Kingzone. But once again, he's not invincible. There are ways to get ahead of Peanut and to get into the minds of Kingzone and to find your own advantages, and that will be vital for any of these other teams that are looking to take a game off of the Korean champions.
Yeah, and you got to think that Cuz is probably not going to see quite as much time as Peanut in these matchups. Maybe when Kingzone's 5-0 in the last game, Cuz comes in, but I think Peanut really wants to showcase what he can do again on the international stage. And he's got a chip on his shoulder from those SKT days. He is looking for redemption. Coming up after the break, we're hitting the top 3, and can anyone dethrone Kingzone from the top of the throne? Welcome back. It's League Unlocked. Eric and Mark here counting down the top 10 players at this year's mid-season invitational, which is an absolutely stacked lineup across the board. Plenty of good players to be checking out, and we're moving on to the top 3. The cream of the crop, you could say.
These are the real winners here, right? This is the medal round. You have to be pretty happy to get through here.
This is the medal round, and coming in with that illustrious bronze medal is BDD, the Spring Split MVP from the LCK. And you might say number 3 for an MVP. That's a little insane. Well, Rekkles was at number 6. But BDD, his numbers don't really jump off the page from the Spring Split, but this guy has shown time and time again now that he's not just a KDA player.
Yeah, he's totally different. When you're looking at the mid lane and you're thinking of the top mid laners coming out of Korea, you're thinking of Faker and you're thinking of all those amazing plays and all those numbers. But when you're looking at BDD's numbers, yeah, pretty good numbers there. But what the thing that you really see that sticks out when you're watching BDD is the absolute control that he has over his own lane. The CS managing that he's able to do, the pressure that he's able to apply to the opposing laner, and then to be able to use all of that in connection to be applying the pressure that he wants to be putting around into those side lanes for Kingzone, and to try and help Peanut get those advantages into there and to help snowball their compositions into the victory formation. This is one of the key cogs of Kingzone getting it done. BDD is a true star in the mid lane.
Yeah, he's very much a team-first kind of player. He'll die for exchanges. I mean, you look at this engage, he'll sacrifice himself to make sure that the team's getting ahead in these skirmishes, and he really doesn't need jungle attention. I mean, Peanut likes to go towards Khan and get him ahead because Khan is absolutely insane, but he doesn't need that attention from Peanut in the mid lane to either get his own advantages or, like Mark mentioned, roam and help out the other lanes.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about your own solo queue games or whatever you're else seeing from the other mid laner coming down to help gank or make a roam, he's looking to pick up a kill for himself. But when you're talking about BDD, he's looking to head down to that bottom lane, and he is more than happy to give those kills over to someone like Prey and help get him online faster. That is the exact type of unselfish mid laner that BDD is.
Which suits this Kingzone lineup pretty well, because they got a lot of resource-hungry players in the likes of Khan, Peanut, and Prey. So that's pretty much the majority of the roster. But BDD comes in at number 3. Coming in at number 2, there's basically 2 guys left on this list that I'm sure everyone is expecting. And coming in at number 2, it is King Khan of Kingzone. This guy, again, his numbers don't do it justice. His numbers are still very good, but the dominance and the amount of pressure that this guy draws in the top lane is nutty.
He's the king of Kingzone. Khan is absolute royalty here in the LCK, and coming into this MSI, I don't know if we've seen him in a better spot. He is such a dominant player and force in that top lane to deal with that it's almost always going to be a losing lane for the other team. And the important thing to really think about Khan and these things, and where, he was ranked as high as top 4 in the players to watch heading into Worlds last year, and that was in a meta where tanks in their top lane, and the top lane wasn't really the carry position, and that carried into this Spring Split. But guess what we're going to be having at MSI? Patch 8.8 in the Conqueror. Top lane, we're going to be having carries, and if you want to have a guy play carries in the top lane, there's no one else but Khan.
Yeah, and I think this might be the biggest mismatch in terms of positions across the board at this MSI. It's pretty stacked everywhere, but you look at that top lane, Khan already said everyone's going to be kneeling to him, bow to him, because he's going to absolutely crush them, and he probably will. You look at the competition here, Let Me, mostly a tank guy who had some underwhelming moments for RNG. Buipo, who is, of course, our #1 player and the best player in EU. So that's an interesting matchup. And Impact looked pretty solid for Team Liquid, but that's the most one-sided position at this tournament, and I think Khan is going to be feasting at MSI 2018.
Yeah, and it's definitely no shame to the other top laners. Impact, a world champion, but sometimes things can get a little crazy with him. Khan, you know what you're getting. Truly a top-level performing player, and Khan is going to be heading into MSI, into a meta where it suits him perfectly to be picking up these carry champions. And hey, carry champions, they're going to carry the game.
Yeah, it's in the name. That's just kind of how it works. They carry the game. This guy at #1 has carried a lot of games in his career and in 2018. It's not a King Zone member. They've been knocked off the throne. It's the man who got his first ever LPL title. The curse is broken. Uzi comes in at #1. Ever since this guy returned to the RNG lineup, they looked like a totally different team, and they captured the 2018 Spring Split title, and Uzi was playing like a
he was the dominating factor for RNG, and to get it done, there had to be some things that happened. And what happened for RNG this split was Uzi absolutely stepping up his game and his temperament and taking over as the leader of this team, something that hadn't happened in the past for RNG. And to have Uzi step up and be that leader for them and taking over in those games has led them to that LPL title.
Yeah, and in the playoffs, I mean, look at another highlight of Kaisa absolutely destroying people. He gets a pentakill. He was the first guy to 2,000 kills in LPL history. I mean, he played a bunch of different champions. Kog'Maw, not a lot of guys are playing Kog'Maw. He busted out some Kog'Maw games. He can play basically any champion that's going to be meta. And even when this guy gets a little bit behind, you saw in the EDG series, he died a couple times early and was a bit behind iBoy, but when it comes to these late and mid-game team fights, this guy just plays on an absolute another level.
And talking about that, commitment that he's made to his team and finding success now, and that attitude that he had before is, sometimes Uzi, as mechanically gifted as he was, wouldn't want to play certain champions because he's like, I'm above that, or, I don't really think that that's the best move here. And yet now in this split, we've seen him play things like Ashe, and he is willing to take that hit on the damage champion that he wants to play to provide more utility for the rest of the team, which has truly leveled up his play to that next level. And hey, that next level leads you to #1 on our list, Uzi. Congratulations.
Yeah, it takes a pretty insane performance to go ahead of a lot of these King Zone guys, but that's exactly what Uzi has done this split. He did in the playoffs. Ludicrous numbers, ludicrous performances from him, and it's his first MSI. Last time RNG was at MSI, it was Whoosh, who was our starting AD carry. Maybe they do a lot better with Uzi as their starting AD carry in that lineup. But yeah, Uzi comes in at #1. The bot lane is the lane to watch at this tournament.
Yeah, but Uzi coming in at #1, guess what? You got a target painted on your back now. Everyone at MSI is coming for you. Better be ready.
Yeah, he's got a lot of hype and expectations, and I think he'll deliver on it, as well as guys like King Zone. But that is all the time we have for today on League Unlock. Eric and Mark here. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.